What if the monster-hunting women in the pale light of morning isn't an anomaly, but a symptom of a society that has trained itself to look away until it's too late, and the only way to stop him is to stop treating victims as plot points and start seeing them as people whose lives mattered before they became evidence? In Dawn Girl, Leslie Wolfe delivers a serial killer thriller that transforms procedural suspense into a searing indictment of systemic indifference, proving that in landscapes saturated with violence against women, the most dangerous predator isn't always the one holding the knife. It's the culture that made his crimes possible. This isn't merely another cat-and-mouse chase with forensic breakthroughs. It's a psychologically precise narrative where every crime scene feels like both accusation and lament. Consent to investigate is negotiated through respect for the dead rather than sensationalism, and justice requires honoring the living without reducing them to trauma porn. From the first gray light narration, listeners are immersed in a world where dawn doesn't bring safety, it brings reckoning. Perfect for fans of ethically grounded suspense and stories where female investigators triumph over empathy over exploitation. This audiobook serves up relentless atmospheric dread, unflinching emotional authenticity, and a protagonist whose journey from detached profiler to sovereign witness resonates with anyone who's ever been told to focus on the killer instead of the cost. When FBI agent Tess Winnett is assigned to the Dawn Girl case after 3 women are found posed in public spaces at sunrise, she expects pattern recognition, not to discover each victim was systematically erased long before death by institutions that dismissed their warnings as hysteria. But as Tess navigates media frenzy and departmental politics, she realizes this investigation isn't about catching a predator, it's about confronting how law enforcement culture mirrors his dehumanization. Wolfe masterfully avoids reducing Tess to tortured genius or the killer to mythic evil. Instead, she crafts a narrative where profiling becomes moral excavation, where consent is renegotiated through victim-centered methodology rather than procedural entitlement, and where resolution requires integrating grief with rigor. The audiobook narration amplifies this emotional precision, capturing Tess's disciplined focus fracturing into fierce clarity, while secondary voices shift subtly between performative urgency and hidden complicity, making every briefing feel like both strategy session and ethical test. You don't just hear the hunt unfold, you feel the seismic shift of a system learning that some truths can only be seen when you stop looking for monsters and start seeing people. What elevates Dawn Girl beyond typical serial killer fare is its nuanced portrayal of investigative work as restorative practice rather than intellectual conquest. Tess isn't merely solving murders, she's confronting how her own training taught her to treat women's lives as data points, challenging the notion that objectivity requires emotional detachment. Her relationships evolve through acts of radical reciprocity, sharing silences with victims' families that bypass performance, establishing protocols that honor both evidence integrity and human dignity, and defending her team's right to grieve against cultures that mistake stoicism for professionalism. Supporting characters add vital texture, forensic analysts whose expertise encodes embodied memory, journalists whose coverage maps societal bias, even the dawn itself, rendered as liminal archive whose light exposes what darkness concealed. Every interaction reinforces the novel's core truth. In systems built on erasure, attention is insurgency, and presence is the only true evidence. Even the thriller mechanics serve thematic depth, with victimology mirroring systemic failure and timeline reconstruction becoming metaphor for reclaimed narrative. For audiobook listeners, this production is an immersive sensory descent into ethical suspense. The narrator embodies Tess's evolution with remarkable range, from clipped analytical cadence to trembling vulnerability during breakthroughs, while supporting characters are distinguished through vocal textures that honor professional roles without caricature. Sound design enhances atmosphere without overwhelming intimacy, distant city hums marking temporal disorientation, rain against precinct windows during vulnerable confessions, the hushed rustle of case files syncing with breath during moments of revelation, all anchor psychological stakes in tangible reality. Pacing mirrors the rhythm of ethical investigation, deliberate during reflection and family consultations, then surging with urgency as external pressures collide with internal awakenings. Whether you're commuting through daylight routines or sitting in twilight solitude, the audiobook creates a portable sanctuary where slowness feels sacred and connection feels lifeline. It's storytelling as embodied validation, transforming passive listening into active participation in a journey where healing isn't about closing cases, but about restoring voice to the silenced. Ultimately, Dawn Girl redefines the serial killer thriller by centering female epistemology within investigative frameworks. It satisfies genre cravings for intricate plotting and cathartic resolution, while delivering substantive commentary on gendered violence, institutional complicity, and the radical act of trusting women's truths when systems demand spectacle. No prior series knowledge is needed. It stands confidently as a complete emotional odyssey. If you've ever wondered whether justice can coexist with compassion, or if true strength requires refusing to reduce victims to clues, this audiobook will affirm that sometimes the most powerful act is simply remembering their names. Press play, face the dawn, and prepare to believe that even in landscapes shaped by violence, hearts still find ways to bear witness.